Welcome to 131XR. Today we're looking at Crystal Commanders, a brand new real-time strategy game for MetaQuest headsets. Real-time strategy games on formats other than PC have generally had a bit of a lukewarm reception. Can Crystal Commanders buck that trend? Keep watching and you'll find out. Crystal Commanders is a pretty simple RTS game. You have a basic campaign that has only 15 missions, the first 5 of which are essentially acting as a tutorial, but then it expands into a full RTS experience. It is a game that borrows heavily from the likes of Command & Conquer, and there's nothing wrong with that. While it is simplistic, the options that you have for assault and defense are quite basic and minimal. What it does do, it does with very high quality. The game is played on virtual maps, and you, as the commander, looking down at these maps. Be prepared for a bit of a neckache if you're planning on playing some of the longer missions. You will select your units and your buildings and place them on the map using the controllers as pointers. So choose from your menu, you want to build your factory, choose where on the map you want to place it, factory becomes built. Just like traditional RTS games, there are ranges and lines of sight and fog of war and all that you have to contend with, and you can send recon or scouting units out to pervade the area and build buildings or units or whatever you suggest further afield. Once you have some range on the map unlocked, there is no limitation to your building zone. Of course, building further away from your base can leave you vulnerable. So just like the best RTS games, it is a management simulation of prioritizing which areas you want to cover for both attack and defense. And of course, you will have to gather resources in order to do all of this. The currency in the game is harvested from crystals, hence the name Crystal Commanders. And this is very similar again to harvesting in Command & Conquer. You'll send out drones to the crystals, they will gather resources, bring it back to your resource collector, which will then be turned into currency, which can be used to build more buildings and more troops. Build up a big enough force, and once you have uncovered the enemy base, you can take the fight to them. But in later levels of the campaign, don't expect them to sit and wait. They're not going to wait for you to build 100 tanks to take to their base. They will be coming at you too. So defense is sometimes the best early strategy. Making sure that you're defending your crystals, your resources, and keeping them away from enemy drones can often turn the tide of a game. In addition to the campaign, there's a whole host of different gameplay options. Personally, I love the 1v1 skirmish battles against the AI, but there's also 1v1 multiplayer, and these battles, these one-off skirmish battles, come in a variety of different modes. There's 3 available at present, but the developers are promising more beyond launch.
Amari, it's time to begin.
Furthermore, of course, one of the big selling points of Crystal Commanders is the fact that not only can you play in your virtual room that is a space away from your real world space, but also the entire game can be played in MR. The MR instances of Crystal Commanders are actually pretty interesting. Sometimes the game does get confused and place objects out of reach and so on, and that can be frustrating. But by and large, the accuracy of the game is pretty good. Not only does it play along flat surfaces, but it will also recognize bookcases and desks and things in your room and create some elevation, bringing into the battle more flying units and elevators that you can build in order to lift units up to reach different heights. The MR functionality isn't perfect. In smaller rooms, it can be a struggle. The developers have advised that you should, for now, play in a larger space, which, you know, is to be expected. But there are promises that this will be refined as time goes on. The developers are aware that smaller spaces could have trouble and plan on upgrading this ability, this usage of your space in the future. Regardless of whether you're playing in MR or VR, the thrill of seeing these small units run around your space is wonderful. The aesthetic, the visual design is quite basic. Everything is just bold colours. And that's fine, because these are essentially virtual toys in your space. You are having a virtual mini toy tank battle across your floor, or having drones fly through the sky around your head. It's super exciting seeing your units march towards that battle across the floor space as if they are toy tanks rolling across your space. And in terms of the rock, paper, scissors of real-time strategy games, although the amount of buildings and units you can have is limited at present in Crystal Commanders, there is enough there to sink your teeth into to get some real enjoyment out of this. I'm going to go as far as to say that Crystal Commanders is one of the best real-time strategy games that's launched on MetaQuest this year, if not in the entire lifespan of the headset. If you're a fan of real-time strategy games, you'd be a fool not to pick up Crystal Commanders. Go and check it out right now. There are some minor blemishes with the game. For example, the accuracy of being able to select units and buildings with your pointer is sometimes a little off, and the MR not really working particularly well in small spaces at times. But aside from this, Crystal Commanders is a fantastic real-time strategy experience for VR and MR players. Go and pick this one up. Symphony is a new rhythm action game available for MetaQuest headsets, and today we're going to take a look at this brand new MR title. Can it stand up to the might of Beat Saber? Keep watching to find out. While Symphony may present itself as sort of a conductor simulator, that is far from the truth. There's already a game like that in VR, and Symphony isn't trying to do this. It's a very straightforward rhythm action game, similar to the likes of Synth Riders or, as I said, Beat Saber. Here, you'll be playing along to classical music. You'll have a circle presented in front of you, and notes will travel into the circle, which you must swipe at the appropriate time. There's also bubbles that appear, which you have to hold or even direct to a certain point on the circle. And of course, the unique part of this is it's all presented in MR. The circle that appears is in your own space, and the visuals encompass your entire surrounding, turning an MR experience into a VR experience, depending on your success. It's a pretty straightforward game, and there's not much new to learn if you're a rhythm action fan. What it does do differently, though, is the way in which the environment reacts to your progress. In games like Guitar Hero, you'll find that successfully playing along with the songs amps up the crowd. The feedback that you get from the environment plays into the addictiveness of the game. And Symphony takes this to new extremes. Much like Tetris Effect, in that the environment reacts and changes towards the player and how they engage with the game. Symphony starts with a simple circle presented in your room. It's a mixed reality experience. progression through the game, successfully hitting notes and bubbles and so on, will create a virtual environment that expands around the player, eventually fully encompassing you if you continue to be successful. Keep that streak up and the world starts to react in a significant fashion to your progress. This creates an atmosphere which drives you to want to play more, to want to be successful and keep that note streak going. And it's very engaging. All the way through the experience, you'll be finding new animations and new types of environments that compel you to continue on forward and to get better. And you do need to get better to conquer this game. While easy mode has a gentle touch to it, playing on hard is extremely difficult. It's extremely fast-paced. You'll be moving your two hands individually, just like you would with Beat Saber, and there are colours that coordinate with which items you should be hitting with which hand. And Symphony can be played both with the Quest controllers, but also without. It can be played with hand tracking. When playing, and the VR world does emerge and encompass your entire environment, you'll find that your hands actually still are shown with MR. Whether they're controllers or just your hands themselves, there'll be little circles around your hands showing them in the real world. And this reacts pretty well. It's very good at tracking where your hands are so that you can see exactly what you're doing. There is a decent variety of songs included at this point, though there are more promised down the line. And also there's some customization in terms of which one you choose to use and so on. Of course, all the usual high score charts and unlockables are included in the game. And while these are a nice touch, they're not exactly the selling point. What does sell Symphony is the fact that it is a very good rhythm action game with a very, very intriguing, compelling environment. And what's more, it's classical music, which is not something you see very often in video games. Symphony is available now for MetaQuest headsets, and while it's never going to knock Beat Saber off its lofty perch, it is a very, very good rhythm action game. If you're looking for a new musical experience in VR, we highly recommend you check this one out. And it's also great for newcomers to the medium. Vestiges Fallen Tribes is a new strategy game available for MetaQuest headsets right now and developed by WannaDev Studios. The game is a different kind of strategy game to what you might be expecting, and it's certainly got some intriguing elements to it. Stick around to find out whether this one is worth your time. Vestiges Fallen Tribes tells a tale of 3 different kingdoms that are all in battle over a scarce resource, water. The story is a sudden drought came and lands started fighting for this resource, having huge armies and wars and technological innovation and so on, and then eventually they all just died out. So it came down to a pure tactical battle scenario where essentially a game is played and the victor takes the water. So going from a storytelling about these grand wars that happened to 2 guys sitting in a tent playing cards. It's an odd story, but it works towards the game that you're playing because you then embody the commander of these tabletop armies. You are sitting in this tent, in this environment, having this battle for your tribe. And the way that these battles work is kind of a mix between Magic the Gathering and Pokemon TCG and Warhammer. In each battle round, you have a number of different units that are mounted as cards upon your arm, and then you choose the cards you wish to use, resource dependent, drag them onto the table and place them into a location where they're not overlapping other units within your deployment zone. And once you're happy with your deployment, where you've placed your troops on the battlefield, You can grab a token from your arm and throw it onto the battlefield, and you'll watch the battle play out in real time. There is no interactive element once you throw that token. You're simply watching how your troops perform on the battlefield. Each of these troops, or cards, have different abilities, different strengths and weaknesses. And if you're unsure what your opponent is playing, you can hover over them, over the units, and it will reveal what their strengths and weaknesses are. And as such, you can place units in their line of fire that will counteract what the enemy is trying to do. This seems simple at first. If you have a unit with a long range attack, why not put down a defensive shield and then melee units behind? The defensive shield protect your melee units as they charge across the table, and then getting in close and doing significant damage to the ranged unit. All is well. You have won that round. And this is a key element of the game. Each battle is in a number of rounds. It's not a simple case of put down all my units, off they go to war, and I have won. What you do is you place your units for each round, and then the enemy will add additional units in the next round. But the units that you've already used are still on the tabletop. So you just add to those units. So, in the example previously given, if the enemy has a ranged unit and you put down a shield and melee units, maybe they then place a melee unit in front of their ranged unit. So you might want to add a ranged unit to take out their melee unit and allow your melee unit into their ranged unit, and so on. And it builds the game in layers of complexity, quite slowly. You'll become used to the units that you have available and what they do as a smooth progression until you get to the point where you're having fairly complex battles with dozens of different enemy types and different units at your command. You'll also find that your resources are limited, and in many matches that you have later on in the game, you have many different unit options available to you, but not the resources to use them all. So you have to very carefully choose how to divide the resources you have available between the different units that you have open to you. There are also, I don't know what you call them, power-up cards, item cards, ability cards, and these do things like allowing you to return a unit that you've deployed. So if you find that your first round, a unit performed really well, but in the second round, that unit is now dying because there are new troops that have been added that counteract their abilities, you can remove that unit from the table and replace it with something else. And maybe they'll survive longer. Each round is built upon the previous one. There is no stepping back and going, hey, I'm going to redeploy everything. Once a unit is deployed, it is deployed unless you use one of these power-up cards, one of these abilities that you get at some points. Now, in our experience, we could not work out how to tailor the cards we've got in the story mode. They seem to just be handed out to you, which is strange. You would have thought you'd be able to pick from a deck or something similar, but it seems fixed for every match that you play. There is no choice in the rounds. It's simply a case of these are the troops that you have available, pick from them and do the best you can with what the options are. However, there are also custom matches and, of course, multiplayer. And this changes things considerably. The custom matches are strange. There's no skirmish mode in which you're just playing one-off games against an enemy. The custom matches, you play both sides. So you choose your army and then deploy your units, and then switch to the other player with their army and deploy their units, and then see the battle play out. It's interesting. It's kind of like a training mode. It's not quite the free-form gameplay that we would like, playing against AI in one-off matches, but it is a nice addition nonetheless. There's also tactics matches, which are essentially just scenario-type gameplay. You have a set number of units, and the enemy has a set number of units, and you have a specific objective to achieve in each of these battles. Using the first one as an example, a unit of shadow troops from the enemy is coming in behind your attacking line. So you need to defend them while they go off forward and attack, and these shadow troops don't come and annihilate your units. Unfortunately, sometimes during the game, the AI can be a bit unwieldy. Once you've set that battle in motion, that round in motion, you have no control. It's watching the game play out. As such, in this tactics mode, I placed a defensive wall in my backline to defend my troops. As you would imagine, the shadow troops were behind, so I placed a tank, defensive wall, to protect my units as they went forward to a fight. However, the AI didn't necessarily turn around in time every time I played this, and was often annihilated by the Shadow Troops before the defensive wall was in place, which is strange. Maybe an option to choose the direction your units are facing would be better in this kind of scenario. They also sometimes get confused about which enemy they should be attacking, so if there's a rock in the way, they'll start maneuvering towards one enemy and then realise, no, actually, this enemy is closer, no, this enemy is closer, and will take some time to get into battle. And this is not a game in which you want your troops to be dallying. The whole time that you are maneuvering forward, automatically, you want your full might, your full strength going forward at one pace. So there is some kinks to be worked out with the AI, the way that these matches play out once you set it to go. The visual style of Vestiges, Fallen Tribes is cool. I like it. The environment that you are set in is quite limited, but the maps that you can play on are pretty varied with different kinds of obstacles to overcome during the battle and to take note of when you're deploying those troops. The way in which the game plays, that it's a tactical assessment first and then watching it play out, is interesting. I very much enjoyed trying different combinations of troops and seeing what advantages and disadvantages I had by pairing different kinds of troops together. And of course, that custom mode helps with this. There's no limit on the troops that you have, so you can deploy what you like, where you like, and see how they take on the enemy. Vestiges Fallen Tribes is available now for MetaQuest headsets, and if you're a fan of strategy and tactical gameplay, this one's definitely worth a look. Hello and welcome to 131XR, and today we're taking a look at Magitech VR, a brand new spellcasting game available for MetaQuest headsets. But it's not just throwing fireballs or conjuring up stone walls. There's a lot more going on in Magitech VR than you might be expecting. Stick around to find out how Magitech VR plays on MetaQuest headsets. Magitech VR has been developed by a very small team, but it actually still offers quite a comprehensive experience. Once you've gone through the initial tutorial for the game, teaching you how to, the basics of movement and actually spell casting, and giving you your initial spell, you'll go into a story mode which does deliver some interesting concepts. The bot character that you have narrating the adventure throughout, and your guide for the experience, does go on a little bit, but it's interesting and he is quite funny at times, so that can be forgiven. Once you've got into the game true, you'll find that you've been shipwrecked? Is a flying ship that crashes known as a shipwreck? You've crashed. You've crashed on a strange island, and you have to explore not only to find the secrets of the technology on this island, but also to escape. Now this is done through both combat and exploration. Here's the big part about Magitech VR that you might not be aware of. It's not just about gaining new spells and combining different elements to create different effects. There is a lot of exploration in the story mode to this game. You'll find all kinds of items, healing items and weapons, starting with just a wooden sword and shield, going up to metal weapons and torches and so on, that will help you on your adventure. You can use both the magic that you earn as you progress and these weapons in order to combat the enemies. And combating these enemies isn't always going to be the easiest of experiences. While they start off pretty simple, annoying flying bots that will shoot very slowly at you and only take a couple of hits to go down, you'll soon find that you'll be encountering much more difficult enemies, ones that take several hits, if not dozens of hits, with basic fireballs or spell casting abilities, and several swipes of your sword to be able to get past them. And they are aggressive. When you enter each area, you'll find that the enemies within are generally not aware of your presence, but as soon as they've been activated, as soon as they know you're there, they won't leave you alone. They'll be hunting you down until you die. Unfortunately, you're going to die quite a lot, because the game offers statistics on things like your health on your wrists. And while this is great and keeps you immersive, you don't need a health bar or whatever else, it doesn't often relay just how much damage you've been taking. The screen turns a bit red and you realise you've been hit, but it doesn't really warn you that death is imminent on your next hit when that time comes. Thankfully, there's a pretty good checkpointing system. You'll find that items that you've collected, such as lore and new weapons and so on, remain with you after you die. So while you go back a few steps and maybe a few rooms in a dungeon and so on, you'll find that you're pretty well equipped to go back into that same challenge that previously took you off guard. There is some puzzle solving elements in Magitech VR as well, and while it's pretty basic at first, it does actually get quite complicated the further you go. It's all around using the magic that you've earned so far. In a similar fashion to earlier Zelda games, if you've just unlocked a new magic ability, you'll probably find that the puzzles you need to solve are going to use that ability. So the campaign, what is there, is actually pretty enjoyable. It's not exactly huge, but it does allow you to get into the world and meet these characters and understand why you're there as a magic caster. But beyond that, there are many different modes that you can enjoy in Magitech VR. Firstly, we have the combat arena, which is essentially just like a wave shooter where you're shooting fireballs and water and so on. You can use all of the spells and abilities that you've unlocked in the single player story mode in the combat arena. So you're going to want to have made some progress in the single player mode before you take this on. The first wave that we found, although it's seasonal, so it may change, but in our experience, the first wave that we found is going to shoot fireballs at you in the same way that you're shooting fireballs at them. So you're not exactly doing high amounts of damage. Then we have a PvP multiplayer mode, and this runs with the same rule set. You'll find that there are abilities in the single player campaign that transfer to this multiplayer mode, and if you're jumping in straight off for the PvP, you're going to find it difficult. You're going to need to have progressed through the single player campaign and unlock some new spells before you can take on other players, especially as at the moment there are certain spells that seem significantly more powerful than others. Finally, we have the sandbox mode. Now this is just essentially pieces cut off from the single player campaign, where you can explore the environments and engage in enemy combat with the abilities that you've unlocked and use out the spells that you've earned, try new things, experiment a little, with no penalty for failure. As such, it's a nice way to explore what is on offer in the game, but it's not exactly essential towards your enjoyment of the game. So Magitech VR is actually a pretty cool action-adventure game, spellcasting game, however you want to look at it. But there are a few issues. Firstly, we found that the aiming system in the game leaves quite a lot to be desired. We're not exactly, the best spellcasters in the world. I've rarely casted a spell in my house. But I would hope that the auto-aiming system that we're used to in VR games would apply here, and Magitech VR doesn't seem to do that. It's very hard to be accurate when you're casting your spells, especially when strafing. At times, you'll think, I completely missed that, and you'll hit it dead center. Other times, when you know that that shot should have landed, it's just miles away. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, most VR games have a very heavy auto-aim system on. We don't know it because the experience for us is I'm going to shoot this and that's going to hit the enemy, and it works. But Magitech VR seems to be very light touch here. Maybe we're wrong and maybe I'm just a terrible shooter. But from my experience, accuracy is important in a game like this, and some more nudging in that area could help a lot of players. Also, there's some very minor, silly little issues, like when you're trying to find the collectibles, the ones you have already got appear in the world again and are still highlighted for you to collect again. So you go and get them and then find out that actually that wasn't one that counted. But these are minor blemishes on an otherwise thoroughly enjoyable action-adventure experience. Magitech VR is available for MetaQuest headsets now. We thoroughly recommend that you go and check out this action-adventure spellcasting game. It does have some issues, but it's a pretty good time regardless. Hit is a brand new game for the MetaQuest that has proven to be quite a hit. And no, I won't apologise for the pun. The game has been developed by Super Hyper Mega and it's super popular right now. But is it actually any good? Stick around and find out.
Okay, that one hurt.
The premise of Hit is pretty simple. There's a clay head in front of you on a spike, and you must hit it. That's it. That's all there is to this game. As you go through, you'll find there's a wide variety of different heads, different clay heads that you can hit in a variety of different ways. There's a lot of different human heads and also animal heads and also a clay wall for you to beat up. You can change the colour of all of these heads too, to different styles of clay. And as you're hitting them, they will react. They will talk back to you, talking smack and telling you how you're not very good. Or if you do some real damage, they'll tell you how much it hurts. There is a meter beside the head as you're hitting it, which will tell you exactly how much damage your impacts are doing. And as you're going through the game, you will find a variety of weapons can be unlocked to increase or decrease that damage.
Ow! I prick that. Oh, ow! Ow!
Now, while simply beating up the head, it is fun. That's not all there is to it. When you're playing the game, you will see next to the head is an image representing the head in a beaten up form. And the idea is to beat the head in the same fashion as it appears in that image. You've got to make this clay sculpture look like the one in the image. And as you do, you'll earn more money. And then you can sell that clay sculpture of a beaten up head and buy new weapons to do more damage.
Do I look like your therapist? Ouch! 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 Okay. I'm sorry. Ouch! Wet noodle energy.
That is all there is to it right now. It's a pretty simple gameplay loop. It is fun, but it's not particularly deep. Now, as we go on, as time passes by and the game grows, the developers have promised to bring more content. They're already promising new weapons and new heads, and I have a feeling that there's going to be much more that comes down the line. Hit is a simple game, but it's also got a low entry price point, and as such, it's proven quite popular. It's a nice idle distraction for 5, 10, 15 minutes, where you don't have to think too much and you don't have to get too deep into it. It's also a pretty good workout. While it's never going to compare to the likes of Fit XR, it does get you moving. You're swinging those punches in a variety of different ways in a very rapid succession, and you'll feel the adrenaline running as you're playing this game. You'll feel the heat rising as you're swinging those punches constantly. There is nothing else to this game. You're just swinging and swinging and swinging, so you will get quite a workout going. Now, as we've said, the gameplay isn't exactly too deep. You're going to be punching, unlocking new weapons, punching, unlocking new weapons. That's about it. The weapon variety is also pretty basic right now. You have a fish as the first one that you unlock, and why you would expect this to be like a wet fish you're slapping with is actually just pretty much exactly the same as a baseball bat, although maybe not quite as heavy. You've also got a crowbar, and if you rate the game, you unlock a gun, like a pistol. You can obviously ignore that. Just click the rate button, close the menu, and you'll get the gun anyway. And there's hand grenades hidden in a drawer, so look around the area. But in our experience, we couldn't actually get the hand grenades to do anything. So we're not sure what's up there. But that's really all there is to Hit as it stands. As we say, the game has become quite a hit on the MetaQuest store, and that's probably because of how immediate it is, how cheap it is, and of course, the fact that it's very viral content. This is the kind of stuff that performs super well on social media, so expect to see it in a lot of your feeds coming up. All in all, Hit is a fun, enjoyable experience for a few minutes of your time. As the game goes on and becomes more popular and gets more content, we can see this becoming an enjoyable game that you'll return to again and again and again. But right now, if you go in not expecting anything particularly deep, you'll enjoy this one. Welcome to 131XR and this review of Cooking Clash, a brand new time management game available for MetaQuest headsets now. Time management games have been around for quite a while now, especially on mobile devices. But in VR they can be something different, more immersive. Is Cooking Clash one of the top tier ones available for MetaQuest? Stick around and you'll find out. So Cooking Clash follows the traditional setup of time management games in that you are a restaurant owner and people will come into your restaurant and they will request a specific dish and you'll have to prepare it and then give it to them in exchange for money. So far, so normal. There's nothing that really makes Cooking Clash stand out at this point. There's free gameplay modes, an endless mode in which you can get up to 5 poor responses from customers. There's the 5-minute relaxation mode and the 5-minute rush mode, essentially adrenaline mode, challenge mode if you like. And all three of these gameplay modes have the same basic formula.
I'll let you know when it's just right. It's ready. Take the patty out of the pan and place. Great job. Now, just add the top bun. Finish. The burger looks amazing. Serve it up and watch. Look, the customer loves it. Let's see how much they'll pay for your tasty burger.
Oh my gosh, this burger is awesome!
Wow, that's...
As would be expected from the genre, customers come in, they make an order, you prepare that order, hand it to them, and then get money. Pretty basic stuff. Cooking Clash is a burger bar theme, and there's 2 environments you can play in, but they're essentially the same. Burgers are constructed by putting the bun, cooking the meat, and then adding lettuce or cheese or whatever it may be, and serving, and it's all very simple. But what Cooking Clash does differently is it bends a bit on the ridiculous. A lot of the customers that will come into your shop will be animals, such as pigs and cows. And you can serve them, of course, or you can open the drawer under your counter, take out a gun, and shoot them. Now, this does seem a little extreme, and you will lose a lot of money for doing so, but you'll also get ingredients to make further dishes with. And these ingredients will be free, essentially. Normally, placing a burger on the grill costs a couple of bucks, and so you've got to make sure that you're preparing the food adequately in order to make money from this. However, take out a few guys in your shop, and you got a bunch of free meat or fries or whatever ingredients they leave behind, potentially improving your score. It does seem quite ridiculous that you have these weapons in a drawer under your counter, and they're not like, you have a baseball bat, which is, you know, maybe for protection if you're in a restaurant. I don't know, I've never worked in a restaurant. But having a hand grenade does seem a little extreme. And so are some of the orders that you'll come up against. Often you'll find your customers will be coming in and ordering, while they begin with just a basic burger, a few minutes into the run, and you'll find they'll be ordering big stacks with multiple beef patties and lettuce on several levels, and it can be quite complicated. However, this is really all the game does differently to normal time management games, especially normal VR time management games. The likes of Shroppencraft, for which you can see our review up the top now, had a unique theme, at least. It was put together in a different fashion with lots of interactive objects, which you had to perform actions with in different ways. Cooking Clash doesn't have any of this. It's a very normal setup burger bar, and the actions that you'll be performing are quite normal. Placing a burger on the grill, putting it in the bun, serving it to a customer. You do have extendable arms, which is an interesting mechanic. By pushing the 2 analog sticks forward, your arms can reach out further into the counter or into the environment. But the level of interaction you have there is very limited. It works well for keeping up to pace when you're trying to reach for objects that are further away. Maybe you're going in 2 different directions, and physically moving there would take too much time, whereas just extending your arms brings that time down. It is, for all intents and purposes, a pretty generic time management game in VR. It's not to say it's a bad one, but we can't really fathom what it is about Cooking Clash that has drawn the audience in so far. Given the popularity of Cooking Clash, it's likely that developers will bring more features and more updates to the game in the long run, so we wouldn't discount it as an enjoyable time management game right now. But as things stand, it's pretty generic. There are definitely better time management simulators available on MetaQuest. Ghost Town is a new eerie puzzle adventure game available for MetaQuest headsets now. It's being developed by Fireproof Games, a studio that also created The Room early on in the lifespan of modern VR. The team has got a great deal of respect for that experience. So can Ghost Town live up to expectation? Stick around and you'll find out. Ghost Town is a very slow burn game. You play the role of a character who is working with the Ministry of Defense for occult investigations, and essentially your goal in the game is to free ghosts that have got unfinished business here in the mortal realm and allow them to achieve peace. Seems like it's a simple Ghostbusting style adventure, but there's much more to it than that. Along the way, you'll meet dozens of different characters, all with different stories and different viewpoints. Some will help, some will hinder. And you'll learn about the ghosts that you're facing and the reason why they haven't yet moved on. It's your job to put together all of the clues to create a whole picture of what happened to these ghosts while they were actually alive, and thus free them from the mortal realm and give them some peace. The process is always the same. However, the amount of different environments you'll visit is super impressive. Going through each one, you'll solve basic environmental clues. They get more complicated as the game goes on, but to begin with, you'll be wondering where the challenge is. Simple things like activating switches and pivoting doors and revolving walls and so on. Finding hidden numbers or arrangements in pictures on the walls. These are all pretty basic stuff that anyone who is familiar with video game puzzle solving will immediately find solutions to here. However, as the game goes on, these puzzles do get more and more elaborate. Typically, everything that you need to solve the puzzles you're facing will be in the room that you're in, so you could consider it a bit of an escape room style game to an extent. You'll go on a linear path from puzzle area to puzzle area, and the length of these paths is determined by the atmosphere that the game is trying to emit at the time. And this is one area where Ghost Town truly excels. It is a game that is about keeping you in suspense, that is about building atmosphere. Every environment you'll visit has a different feeling, and once you get further into them, most of them will become quite foreboding.
So, your brother. Let's see.
I know he's not dead. I would have felt something.
Do you carry something of his? Something he touched often? Something that was always around him?
This isn't a game of jump scares, though. It's a game of building an atmosphere that makes you feel like something bad has happened here. And, as the investigator, it's your job to resolve anything that's been left outstanding. As I said before, you'll be solving puzzles on your way through each level, each environment, but most of them will climax in a singular puzzle revolving around the ghost. Now, the ghost you will have met occasionally on your way through the level and learnt about their life and picked up clues along the way. And you'll have a number of objects that relate to them in your inventory. You'll arrive at a pedestal towards the end of each level, and this is where the exorcism essentially happens. You'll have to arrange these objects on the pedestal one by one, plotting the downfall, the reason why this ghost is stuck in the mortal realm. Animations will unfold and you'll eventually free the spirit, and onward goes the story. As I already mentioned, the environments that you'll visit are numerous, but in each one of them, you'll find there is an amazing amount of detail. The amount of environmental storytelling that happens in the background is incredible in this game. Set in the presumably late 70s, early 80s UK, the environments are set dressed to represent the era, but also to represent the characters that live or work in these spaces. And you'll often find that despite the game going on a regularly battering down the occult themes, a lot of the characters are even slightly more twisted than you would expect.
Home sweet home.
Each character has a unique personality, and the voice acting in this game is of an incredibly high standard. The story sections can be a bit long-winded at times when you just want to get on, move forward and see what's coming next. But ultimately, the game does live and die on your enjoyment of this story. The puzzle element and the idea of saving these ghosts is great, but it's a game that you've got a handhold being led through by the story. It's a very linear experience, so if you're not involved in the story, it's really not going to keep you pulled through until the final moments.
Yes.
Conversely, however, with these environments, you will find that there's very little interactivity. Almost every object that you can interact with in the game is part of solving the puzzle at hand. There are hidden magazines that you can collect, collectible items, but aside from this, you can't just randomly pick up coffee cups or other environmental items, play a cassette player or an umbrella, pick up an umbrella or anything like that. This is not that kind of game. This is a game in which you follow through with a plot and interact at predetermined moments to solve puzzles that are presented directly to you.
Adam is involved.
All right. Okay, so what now?
Well, the ritual ended with Angela in a trance, writing all these symbols on a bit of paper. It's all I have to go on, but it's a jumbled mess.
So Ghost Town is a fantastic experience if you're looking for a linear, story-led adventure with some amazing characters and some immaculately detailed sets for you to explore. However, if you're looking for a bit more interaction, a bit more action, or even a bit more scary goings-on, that's not really what Ghost Town is about. This is a game that is presented to you as almost like a play. You are there to engage with what the story is telling you to engage with, but little else besides. If that all sounds good to you, Ghost Town is available for MetaQuest headsets now, so go and check it out.
Seek what is lost. The light is my will to seek what is lost. The light is my will to seek what is lost. The light is my will to seek what is lost. The light is my
I think it's working.
to seek what is
Adam?
lost. The light is my will.
Wait!
The black doorway is opening.
The black doorway is opening. The black doorway is opening.
The black doorway is opening. The light is my... The doorway will seek. Well, what is? The black doorway is my will. The light
Angela?
the light is lost. The black doorway will seek.
Are you all right?
The black doorway is opening.
Angela, can you hear me?
What? Oh, I'm sorry, dear.
Welcome to 131XR and this review of Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition. Now, it's easy to dismiss this kind of game as something that's not for you, or maybe even something that's designed for preteen girls. After all, it is a game about horses, right? But you'd be wrong. Stick around to find out why Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition is actually a pretty good VR experience. As you could imagine, Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition does have a lot of virtual pet style gameplay to it. You got to be looking after your horses, cleaning them and feeding them and building relationship and so on. But that's not actually the core experience of the game. The game is actually better thought of as like a sports management simulator. You'll begin with your first horse and you'll be taught the ropes of taking care of the horse and going on races, as the name suggests. And it's a pretty simple introduction. But as the game progresses and you complete very clear objectives that are laid out for you, you'll earn currency and experience and upgrade your horses and earn money to improve the venue in which you keep your horses. You'll be able to buy new horses or even foals to train up to become horse racing stars. And it's more about the experience of managing this horse racing empire than it is about playing with the horses. As you progress through the story mode, which is the only option in the game, lots of new objectives align themselves and are all pretty clear as to what comes next. In fact, the game presents you with a roadmap. And while you can deter from these, the rewards come thick and fast if you stick to the agenda that is set out for you. The idle distractions that you have are numerous. As we mentioned, you can play with your horses, feed them and clean them, and generally be a horse caretaker. But for those who want more of an objective-based experience, there's a lot involved here. Much more than you would usually expect from a game of this nature. Competing in horse races is the key to obviously winning currency that allows you to purchase upgrades. But the upgrades aren't just about buying new horses or fancier clothing and attire for these horses. You're going to be expanding your empire, your small little ranch that you begin with, into a horse racing stable of pedigree. There's no real other way to put it. The idea here is that you start small with your first horse in a ranch that you have just bought, having given up your city job, and expand your empire with your business acumen, mostly coming from winning races. So the game is realistically divided into 3 different propositions. The first of which is the virtual pet style simulator, where you can dress up your horse and you can clean them and look after them and pet them and feed them and become friends and build that relationship. And that's great. But there's also the side quest, side tracking element of the game, where you can engage in activities such as exploring the island in a free roam the island on horseback. The third is the management simulation, and this is where things get intriguing, because Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition isn't just about playing with horses. It is actually a very rewarding game, becoming involved in wanting to earn that currency and wanting to upgrade. You feel the progression as you're going through the game. You feel the upgrades having an impact on the way that you play. And this comes both in the way you manage your stables, your ranch, and also which horses you choose to race with and which abilities you want them to upgrade and become better in races. You'll often find that actually the difficulty of the races is quite high. You will need to train and ride on horses several times in order to achieve victory. As for the racing itself, it's not a simulation, you are actually playing in the races. And the motion control system is fine. There is some conflict we found several times with the difference between the motion involved for charging up your sprint and executing your sprint. It might be advisable for the developers to add in, say, a button press that switches between charging your sprint and actually executing on it. But aside from that, the horse racing is very well delivered. The scenery is very well detailed, there's narration that happens, commentary, all the way through the races, which is pretty on form. It does give you a real feeling that you are immersed in this horse racing experience.
Clumsy Charm in 7th spot. Number 3, trying to outdo them. Pounding down the course, it's Fiery Fortune. Splashed Strawberry in 2nd spot. Clumsy Charm, not feeling good where it is. Splashed Strawberry, the leader. Clumsy Charm, still in the last spot.
That is really the takeaway you should be getting from Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition. This is a game that immerses you greatly in the experience you're having, which is ultimately the goal of VR, right? Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition is a port of a console game, and it's a console game that I have actually played previously. But the VR element, the VR edition, is significantly better than the console version. Even though it's a port, it seems the developers have put a great deal of effort into making this a quality VR experience, and it works. You feel the size and scale of the horses as you're cleaning them and looking after them. You feel the intensity of the races as you're trying to get that final furlong closed. And you feel rewarded when you're seeing your upgrades on your physical property on your ranch. There's a lot to love about Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition, even if you're not a big fan of horses. As I said at the start of this review, Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition is better looked at as a sports management simulation rather than a virtual pet. And for that, it's pretty good. I would argue that it in fact is one of the best sports management simulation games available in VR. If you're not into horses, there is that element of there'll be lots of abilities that you have, lots of functionality that you won't be interested in. You'll just want to get on and improve your ranch, get new horses, complete objectives, earn your currency, and follow that path. And that's fine. If you don't want to play that stuff, you can ignore it. But if you are looking for a management simulation, if you are looking for a game that asks you to put effort into specific areas and find upgrades and continue along a pathway, it's a very rewarding game. Rival Stars Horse Racing VR Edition is out now for MetaQuest headsets. If you're looking for a sports management simulation game, this one's actually quite surprising. Just goes to show, don't judge a book by its cover. Welcome to 131XR, and today we're talking about Harpagun, a new shooting game on MetaQuest headsets. But there's a lot of shooting games on MetaQuest headsets, so what makes Harpagun any different? Stick around and you'll find out. So Harpagun actually debuted earlier in the year. It launched as an early access title, and since then, the developer Something Random has continually updated the game with different hotfixes and new levels being added and more and so on. So now we're at the final release version, which just launched on MetaQuest headsets. And with this final release version, we can get an actual taste of the game and what it's actually supposed to be. And what it's supposed to be is essentially like an on-rails first-person experience. It's a weird combination at times. Kind of like, I don't know, like Star Fox style shooting game. As the player, you move between specific points on the maps. And these designated points, you hop between them by moving the control stick. There is no freedom of movement, whether personal choice of teleportation or natural locomotion. It is literally just these hotspots. And for a lot of the game, you'll just go forward in a straight line. Just plop, plop, plop until you reach some enemies or an obstacle and take them out. And then you'll go further. Plop, plop, plop. And in specific instances, in bigger battles or boss fights and the likes, you'll find that there are multiple choices of these spots you can hop between. We've given you the idea that you can dance around and strafe almost to kind of dodge enemies and incoming fire. Now this is all well and good. The linear structure of the game doesn't really impact it. Of course, there'll be first-person shooter purists that hate the idea of forced linear movement, but that's alright. There's plenty of other first-person shooter games in VR just for them. For people who are looking for something a bit more experimental, Harpagun does have some answers. One of the key elements of Harpagun is its attraction ray. It has a gun which is on each hand which can pull objects or enemies in different directions or even towards you. It's not too far removed from the gun that you had in Bulletstorm. But here, it's used for both fighting and also for puzzle solving. You can use the gun to pick up enemies and throw them at other enemies, bash them into the floor, throw them up into the sky, or you can also use it to dislodge rocks or wooden poles or beams that are blocking the way forward, giving you access to new areas. You also get standard guns that are automatically equipped to both hands, giving you a combination of attract and shoot. And also, the enemies and objects you attract, you can propel forward and shoot them back at other enemies. There's a pretty cool combination going on. You could do some pretty interesting stuff. Grabbing an enemy, throwing it into the sky, and then shooting it is a ton of fun. And obviously, there are loads of different enemies and encounters that you'll come across that will take on different aspects of these two different weapon varieties that you have. For example, very early on, you'll meet shooting enemies mounted on stalks. And while you can just shoot at them, they take a lot of bullets to kill. You can also try and pull them, and they're a bit tougher than normal enemies to lift off, but they will pull eventually. However, what you can do is you can grab the bullets that they shoot at you and fire them back, and this more than often results in an instant hit kill. So while it's a bit more tricky and you have to plan your attack, especially when there's 3, 4 or 5 of these all shooting at you at once, it does make for a better result if you manage to execute it well. Currently, the campaign mode in this final release version of Harpagun is quite short. There's only a handful of levels and it won't take you very long to get through each one. The difficulty does ramp up quite quickly. While you might fly through the first level, the second one can provide a bit more of a challenge, and so on as you go. However, there's not much in the way of replay value for the campaign once you're done. What does offer replay value, however, is the arena mode and the arcade gameplay. Now, these are two different variations of the same formula. You get to add mutators that change the way the game plays, only slightly in most cases, but even so, it adds another layer of depth to the action as you're going through the levels. Harpagun received a decent amount of attention on its way to release from the early access version of the game. It's developed by Something Random, who also made Toy Trains VR, which is another popular VR game. And it's not surprising that Harpagun has received this attention, for while it's not as free as most first-person games, the combination of the attraction gun and the shooting does make for some pretty compelling gameplay. It also looks lovely. Very cartoony aesthetic to it, with splats of ink essentially, or alien blood, which look like ink, when you do damage, and animation that is very smooth and fluid. It's not particularly detailed because it's going for more of a cel-shaded, cartoony style aesthetic, but what is there is designed very well for the action that you'll be experiencing, and that action comes thick and fast as you progress through the levels. The gunplay, as I've said, is quite intense at times, so being able to clearly see what's attacking you from what direction at what point is important. The developers have done a really good job of making sure that everything that's happening around you is delivered really clearly. You rarely feel cheated when you lose. You can normally assess, this is what I did wrong, this is what I need to do better next time. Harpagun from Something Random is available for MetaQuest headsets now. It's not going to be a game that appeals to everybody, but for people who are looking for an intense shooting experience and something a bit different from the norm, it's worth checking out. However, if you're one of those guys that will only play games with free locomotion, this one ain't for you. Wanderer, The Fragments of Fate is now available for MetaQuest headsets. The game has previously been available for various different VR platforms, where it was very well received. Can the MetaQuest version live up to those previous entries? Stick around and you'll find out.
We'll rest in peace.
Wanderer, The Fragments of Fate is an adventure game. It's a linear exploration through a world that has been created for you to journey through. It's an interesting story about time and the environment and all sorts of different aspects to it. Bordering on sci-fi-ish, and it's pretty enjoyable. It's a pretty good story. The story takes you through different time periods and different locales, and you have to piece together what is actually going on through environmental details, through NPCs, lots of different interactions that will happen through the game. And the gameplay itself is actually split into two components. The bulk of the gameplay is pathfinding. You're in this world and there's a clear, obvious endpoint that you need to reach, but how you get there from where you are isn't so obvious. You'll have to explore the areas and journey through climbing and swinging and running through different obstacles and pathways in order to reach your destination.
Another great song. Another 2.5 minutes closer to a new year. You're tuned in to Daydream Radio. Your choice to see out 1958. An event.
There is also some puzzle solving involved in this element of the game, some of which is optional, but by and large the puzzles are contained within a single area. You won't often find that there's much taxing about the puzzles. Really, the challenge is in that pathfinding. The challenge of the game is about how to plot a route to your destination more than it is logical thinking.
Stage 2 denied. Iris scanner obstructed. Please remove obstruction. Stage 2, iris recognition. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow, I'll miss you. Paul McCartney, lead singer of the Stevedores.
What? Who is it? Stand and unfold.
This pathfinding, probably think of it best as an Uncharted game or one of the newer Tomb Raiders. You'll find that there are both vertical and horizontal challenges to overcome. You could be swimming and climbing. There's lots of different physical activities to engage in. And just like the aforementioned flat screen games, when you're at the end of a long path of this endurance challenging, and you find that you mess up on that last hurdle, it can be incredibly frustrating. This is almost like a platform game in which you, physically, have to engage with the platform in action. So when you fail at that last challenge and have to redo the entire event, you're not just mentally drained, like, oh dear, here I have to go again. You are physically drained as well. Every piece of this puzzle is taking endurance from you physically. The second aspect of the game is the combat, and to be frank, I think the game would be better without it. It's very lukewarm and light touch. There are many games in VR that do melee combat pretty well. There's been a lot of progression in the last few years. And Wanderer Fragments of Fate, it simply doesn't keep pace. There's a wide variety of weapons, both melee and ranged, and there are plenty of options at your disposal, be it stealth or aggression. But by and large, the combat is... when you see an enemy, you're more disappointed that it's going to take you out of the adventuring for a moment to deal with this enemy than you are, yeah, ready, let's go, let's get into a fight here. A very good example of this is when swinging a weapon, in the fact that it's often hard to tell if the weapon is actually going to do any force. Think of it more like a Wii remote waggling in order to let down enemies, opposed to actual tactical taking the advantage with the weapon that you have. What's more, there is a knife throwing system which is hilarious. I have recently complained about some games in the auto lock system that they have the auto aim built in, and Wanderer takes things to a whole new level. You can be throwing a knife and know that you are completely off target and see it swoop into the enemy, more often than not into the back of their head. It's kind of like you're throwing magic knives here. It's kind of ridiculous. As we said before, the story of the game is quite intriguing, and the platforming, adventuring, pathfinding, whatever you want to call it, this is pretty high quality stuff. It's very enjoyable, and the longer you go through the game, the difficulty in these challenges ramps up, but at a fairly even pace. Take out the combat, and you've got a really good experience going on here, aside from a few bugs that do exist in the game. As with many games that have been ported down from PC VR to MetaQuest, sadly there are some significant frame rate issues at specific points in the game. I'm sure these are issues that will be overcome quickly, and so we imagine that by the time you're watching this, it probably isn't an issue anymore. But one big bug that we did encounter was early on in the game when you first meet Amelia, who is an NPC who is on your team. Now, should you accidentally kill Amelia, you're going to restart her checkpoint. This is to be expected. But in an instance that we had of throwing a coffee container at Amelia, it resulted in her death. That's fine, if a bit questionable, but what actually happened was the game locked up, so much so that it soft-locked the entire MetaQuest 3S. The only way to get around this was to force quit the system, shut it down, and restart from the beginning. Certainly an unfortunate issue. We hope that this one gets resolved pretty quickly, because we don't want to see people who are maybe less familiar with the hardware finding that this game is locking up their headset. All in all, Wanderer the Fragments of Fate is a decent port for the MetaQuest headsets. If you haven't played it already and you're looking for a new kind of adventure game or a story-led game, we recommend you check it out, despite the issues with the combat. Welcome to 131XR and this review of Room Escape, a brand new escape room game that's just launched on the MetaQuest headsets. There's plenty of escape room games in VR, it's quite a popular genre. So can Room Escape stand up to the competition? Find out in this review. Room Escape has been developed by Mastery VR. This is a studio that has done several VR titles in the past, but nothing that's going to particularly jump out at you. I mean, Chess VR? I love chess, but it's not exactly a headlining game in VR. And the same applies to Room Escape. So Room Escape is a pretty run-of-the-mill escape room game in VR, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. What it does have is a constant story thread that continues throughout the entire game. Each level, set in a small room, pieces together a new part of the story from both the introduction of the level and the outro, but also materials that you will find in the level. Every level has a notepad telling a bit more of the story. You learn more about the characters that are involved that you don't actually meet. You're just learning the story of the house that you are in. You play the role of a detective, and this is your first case. And it's told in past tense, so essentially you're the detective narrating an experience that you had, but then playing it. Room Escape is I don't want to say a horror-themed game, but it is creepy, certainly. It's bent towards the creepiness. There aren't exactly much in the way of jump scares, except for one time when a spider leapt out at me in the very first level. But other than that, it's pretty sedate, but it is thick in atmosphere. You'll constantly be feeling like there is this forebodingness happening in the background, all the while you're trying to solve the puzzles in each room. There is no time pressure, however, so it's not like you feel you're going to die or something horrifying is going to happen. You're just constantly aware that this is not a nice place to be. The puzzles themselves are pretty simple to begin with, though they do get more complicated as the game progresses. You'll find that while they're pretty easy to solve once you know, the game is more about making you explore to find clues than it is testing your logic. There were lots of times when playing the game that it wasn't that I didn't know what the solution would be, it's just that I didn't know where to find the objects to make the solution happen. And so exploring the room, it was more important than actually using my brain to uncover the problems. The game doesn't have much in the way of options. You're simply given the room and off you go. You can toggle between free movement and teleport for your locomotion, which is important for experienced gamers. Obviously, immersion in VR is much more prevalent when you have the ability to move wherever you should like, especially in a game like this. We recently had the issue with a game called Lovesick, for which you can find our review up here. And in Lovesick, you only had teleportation, which greatly impacted the immersion of the game and also your ability to solve puzzles comfortably, with many of the objects lying a bit too far out of reach. We don't have that problem with Room Escape. Everything that you need to interact with is easily accessible because you have that freedom of movement. And you'll find in each of the rooms that most of the objects that you can interact with do provide some sort of clue towards the solution. Not all. You'll find bookcases where you can pull the books off for no reason and so on. But most objects, most interactive objects, do in some way work towards the solution for each of the puzzles in the room. Some of these objects, however, do not behave as intended. For example, in the second level, you'll come across a crowbar, which is used to pry nails out of planks of wood. Now, the instinct as a VR game would be to attach the crowbar and then pull. And that seems to be what the intent is, however it does not work that way. It's much more efficient to attach the crowbar to the nail, release the controller, and then press it to grab the crowbar again and then pull. The input recognition is very poor in this place and some others later in the game. Also, you'll find that some objects you interact with, when you drop them, will teleport back to their point of origin, and others won't. They'll just stay wherever you drop them. And this can be quite confusing, as you've got a piece that you know this is going to be for a puzzle later, so you want to put it somewhere safe, and then when you find that puzzle, you return to where you placed it and it's not there anymore. Other times you'll think, oh, well, this has gone back to the place I found it, so you go back to its point of origin, and actually no, it's wherever you left it, which might be under a couch or under a desk or something, and so you have to find the object again. This is annoying, and I hope that the developers pay attention and stick with one or the other. Consistency is important in VR, and this is one of those times when consistency could really help with the enjoyment of the game. The game is visually very comfortable. It's not exactly excelling or pushing the hardware, but it is detailed enough to make you believe in the experience that you're playing. However, one significant problem we encountered on every stage of the game was audio glitches. The game has this irritating footstep sound which is far too loud, and in every level we played, once you played for long enough, the footsteps sound would repeat automatically, even when you weren't moving. And when you did move, it would double up. This is a glitch that we overcame every time we entered the game at some point, random time, during every level, and the only way to overcome it was to quit the game, back to the Meta Horizon dashboard, and reload. This is a small error, and I hope the developers find it and solve it pretty quickly because it is very annoying. So Room Escape is a pretty simple escape room game in VR. There's nothing particularly egregious about it other than that sound bug. But there's also nothing particularly incredible about it. As I said at the start of this video, there are a lot of escape room games in VR. Some of them are pretty high quality. So while Room Escape doesn't reach those lofty heights, it's not a bad time. If you've already played all the popular escape room games in VR, then Room Escape is probably worth looking at. But if there's some that you haven't yet experienced, they may be better than what's on offer here. Especially if you're looking for co-op, as Room Escape is entirely single player. Mastery VR's Room Escape is available for MetaQuest headsets now, priced at £7.99 or your local currency equivalent. It's okay, it's a pretty good time. If you're into escape rooms, it's worth checking out. But there are other better escape room games on the MetaQuest headset, and what's more, there are only 3 levels right now, so it's pretty short. Pinball Effects VR is available for MetaQuest headsets now. Of course, this is a pinball game, right? So what exactly does VR bring to the table? Well, stick around and you'll find out. Now, Pinball Effects VR is a pinball game that's made by Sen Studios. Anyone who's been following the studio for a while will be familiar with how this works. Pinball Effects has launched on many formats over the last decade, or maybe even 2 now. And it's a kind of game where the emphasis is on recreating the real-world physics of pinball. And for that, it's pretty good. The game offers 3 tables in its default package, with subsequent tables added via DLC packs. Each of the tables deliver a high-quality pinball experience. I'm sure that you'll all find your own favourites, but in our experience as people who aren't pinball experts, they're all pretty good. The standard 3 pinball tables that are available as part of the package, you can play as much as you like, anytime, however. The subsequent DLC packages are available in this Day 1 launch package, but only as in a limited amount. You have a set of coins that you can use to play these games, and have a 3-minute free ball limit on each of the tables that you haven't purchased. It's kind of like a demo version of these tables, encouraging you to spend the extra money to enjoy them to their fullest. I in particular really liked the World Cup, I think it's 1998 one, the one which had the dog as the mascot. I really quite like that table, so maybe I'll go ahead and purchase that package, including that table. Now, the pinball obviously is the core experience, and as I say, each of the tables does offer an enjoyable recreation of real-world pinball. Each of them has lots of lights that light up and sounds that sound when you're successful, and it's, you know, it's pinball. It's a great recreation of that real-world experience. They also have lots of like hidden secrets. If you do things in a certain order or activate certain panels, you'll get bonus scores. And yeah, it's a pretty fun time. It's pretty engaging as far as pinball goes. So if you're already a fan of pinball in the real world, this is a no-brainer. If you're a VR gamer looking for a bit of a different experience, then Pinball Effects is still a good time. Outside of the pinball, there is lots to do. There are other mini-games, such as a darts game, which, although it's not great, is enjoyable. And there's a wheel that you can spin when you earn tickets that will unlock new items to put in your environment. And this is where the VR element really comes into Pinball Effects. The game takes place in an underground pinball arcade, with all the set drippings like soda machines and a stereo that you can play your own soundtrack on. And you can customize this arcade. You can earn new posters and new soundtracks and so on, and decorate the arcade however it is you wish. There's even a campaign mode for which completing specific objectives on specific tables will unlock stars which can be spent again to unlock new items and new accessories. What's more, Pinball Effects VR is actually both VR and MR. You can transport your entire arcade into your own space, placing virtual posters and objects and even the tables in your own personal room. However, this does demand quite a bit of space. While the room I play my VR in is pretty sizable, it was hard to fit more than one table in the room with all the other objects that I have around. So while this is a great addition to Pinball Effects, it's probably not going to be a selling point for many people, simply due to the space requirements. So Pinball Effects VR, on the whole, is a pretty good pinball experience. One issue that we did have was when you're facing the table, occasionally there's a little bit of stutter. Not often, I can't say I experienced it more than once on each table, and some tables not at all. But sometimes that frame rate stutter can be a little bit off-putting, especially when you're challenging for that high score. But this is a relatively minor issue that I hope Zen Studios are going to fix in due course. So Pinball Effects VR on MetaQuest isn't actually even the first time that Pinball Effects has been in VR. There was a Pinball Effects game for the original Oculus Rift. I think it was a launch title, but it may have been soon after launch. Now this version has had several years more experience go into it and hardware upgrades to boot, and is significantly improved over that first Pinball Effects experience. So if you were burned by that one, it wasn't bad, but if you were burned by that, don't necessarily turn away at this new edition. It's a very good pinball experience in your own home. So Pinball Effects VR is available now for MetaQuest headsets. It's priced at £7.99 or your local currency equivalent, and then there's also DLC packs on top of that. £7.99 isn't bad for what you get here. The free tables, the underground space to play in, all the environmental objects and hidden extras. It's a pretty good deal, and I think I'm going to recommend you go check this one out. Hello, and welcome to this review of Eggy, a brand new virtual pet simulator available for MetaQuest now. As is the current trend, this game uses MR for you to inhabit an environment with your virtual pet, which this time around is a baby dragon. Does it stand up to other virtual pet simulators available in VR? Stick around and you'll find out. So as you can imagine, Eggy takes on the kind of basic roles that a lot of virtual pet simulators do. You have to feed your pet, you have to play with it and clean up after it. In this case, magical, colourful poos, which is lovely. And you can also buy multiple new items from the shop. New toys, new environmental objects, decor and food, and lots of different things to keep your virtual pet happy. And keeping your virtual pet happy is key. There are status bars available on an in-game virtual tablet, which tell you exactly how happy and how large the pet is growing, and how content it is with the life that you are providing. Now, of course, with this being an MR game, this pet and all the decor and toys and so on that you have exist in your actual room. Whatever space it is that you have assigned to play with your pet, everything will appear around you. That means when you're placing new decor or objects, you're physically grabbing them with your fingers and placing them in a specific place in your environment. An outline of the object will glow red when it can't be placed somewhere, and blue when it can, and in order to place it there, simply release it. And that's it. It populates the environment. The entire game is based on hand tracking. Now, this does come with its own caveats, of course. Hand tracking technology is still not quite perfect, but it's getting there, and Eggy proves this. There are only a few instances where I got truly frustrated with the hand tracking in the game. By and large, it generally worked as expected. For example, one of the key features is being able to place your palm flat, and Eggy, or whatever you happen to name your dragon, will fly and land on your palm. 9 times out of 10, this gesture was easily recognised, and it's rare that the game misinterprets the action that you are trying to make with your gestures. When you're beginning, you can choose from a variety of different dragons, and each of them require a different spell to activate. You go through a process of hatching your egg and selecting which spell to use. And because of this hatching process, where you're casting spells in different ways, no 2 dragons will be the same, so the developers tell us. And you were informed of this by a book showcasing the gestures, but also a glowing hand, and this glowing hand becomes your guide throughout the game.
Grandnish Jandex Newly. Bispel Prendor Flumix Jablib Nox. Nerbish Glatten Frondip Selic Wix. Nerbish Glatten Frondip Selic Wix. Bispel Prendor Flumix Jablib Nox.
There isn't much in the way of objectives for progression. It's all based around what your Eggy, what your dragon would like. But when you're encountering new interactions, this hand will come back and teach you how to perform those interactions. For example, when you play on subsequent days, the hand will come in and inform you of new events that have occurred. Each day you earn new currency, which can then be spent to buy new items in your environment. There's supposed to be a process of like teaching your dragon how to walk and to fly, but we didn't have any of that kind of thing. As soon as the dragon was hatched, it could leave through the door, go fly around in the sky outside, in the virtual sky outside at least. One of the most impressive parts of Eggy is the fact that you actually start in your inventory with a door and a window. When you place these into your environment, Eggy will recognise them and exit out the door, and then you can actually watch him through the VR window, going from your MR environment to the VR environment that happens to be outside of the space you've created, and see him fly around, or her, fly around in the environment outside the virtual environment. This is super cool. I really enjoyed watching Eggy just get up and take to the skies outside my virtual window. With all that being said, as impressive as Eggy is in places, it is a pretty formulaic virtual pet simulation. There's not much to do here that you wouldn't find in other virtual pet games, whether they be AR, VR, MR, or even just traditional virtual pets on a 2D screen. For example, the recently released Stay Forever Home, while it may be a bit more limited in scope in the pet that you can have, it does actually provide a much richer environment for you to explore, leaving your MR home into a VR world. Eggy doesn't have anything like this. While your dragon can venture into a VR world, you are permanently within whatever space that you have made to call home. As it stands, Eggy is pretty impressive in terms of the way it uses the technology, but not too flavourful in terms of what you can actually do with your pet. Ultimately, your dragon wants to return to the dragon realm, which is a goal that occurs as the dragon grows larger. But currently, there's no real indication about how or why it wants to do this. We are positive that there will be more coming down the line for Eggy, and perhaps upgrades to the progression system and actual reward system involved in the game. And for that, we'd say this is definitely one to watch. If you're looking for a new virtual pet simulator on your Quest headset right now, it ticks all the boxes. But if you're just curious, maybe wait a little and see what the developers bring to the game. Richie's Plank Experience is quite a famous VR game. You go up in an elevator, come out, walk a plank over a city, and maybe fall to your death. And that's all there is to it, but it was still really popular. Until recently, when it became no longer available in the MetaQuest store. So what's the alternative? Well, here's Walk the Plank, a brand new, top-selling game available on MetaQuest headsets. Walk the Plank is essentially the new Richie's Plank experience. It's almost identical, in fact. You start the game on the floor level, walk into an elevator, choose your plank from a wide variety of different planks, whether you're day or night, some other minor options. Go up in the elevator, the doors open and you're at the top of a skyscraper looking down at the city below. You can walk out onto the plank, you can look around the environment, and if you fall off, you'll come crashing back down to the floor. It's a really simple experience. The name Walk the Plank tells you pretty much everything you need to know about this. And if you've played Richie's Plank experience, you pretty much know what you're going to get here. There are some minor additions, like the variety of planks, and the fact that you can play a couple of different games. For example, there's a red light, green light style experience where a sign pops up saying stop and go, and if you go when it says stop, you will lose the plank and fall to the floor. But aside from this, Walk the Plank doesn't really add much to the experience. And they do say that, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. And if that's true, these guys really liked Richie's Plank experience. One of the key features is the variety of planks you can walk out on. Different kind of materials and widths, but they really don't change the experience much. Like many games of this ilk available for MetaQuest now, there is even an additional golden plank that you can unlock simply by rating the game. However, again, this doesn't actually change anything. It's just a gold variation of a wooden plank. You don't get any kind of different sensation as you're walking along it, and it doesn't really matter. It's a nice extra to have, of course, but it doesn't bring anything new. What does aim to bring something new to the game is the MR mode. Now this sounds interesting, but in reality, it's pretty basic stuff. In the MR mode, after you've placed where your elevator and plank will be, by manually taking a silhouette and opting for the space in which you want it, in a room that you have enough space in order to walk the plank, of course, you will see the elevator with the doors open into your real-world surroundings. You can adjust the settings before you go up in the elevator, but once you press that button and the doors close, it becomes an entirely VR experience again. The only difference here is that when you first begin the initial ascent, if you like, before the ascent even, you see your room that you're actually in. And when you open those doors, you're in the VR environment. So while having MR is surely a nice thing to check on the store page, it doesn't really add anything to the experience at all. So Walk the Plank is selling well, apparently. According to the MetaQuest store right now, it is a top seller on the store. Which is a shame, because Richie's Plank experience already has pretty much everything that's available here, and was the first one to do it. It was the original. Walk the Plank is pretty much a blatant rip-off of Richie's Plank experience. So we're sorry to the devs that worked hard on this game. We're sure you put some love into it, but you've not really changed the game. You've not added anything new to the formula. The MR experience is negligible. There's hardly any difference to this and the VR experience that already existed with Richie's Plank experience. So, if you're diehard and you really want Richie's Plank experience on MetaQuest, and obviously you can't get it right now, Walk the Plank is a good alternative. But it doesn't do anything new. So don't be expecting any kind of change of pace from Richie's Plank experience with Walk the Plank. The experience of walking the plank and getting this fear of heights and whatever else is still a great VR experience for newcomers. It's still a great VR experience for people who just want to have that fear of heights stirred up in them. But again, it's not doing anything new, and it's not changing the game with its MR edition. So realistically, there's no reason to buy Walk the Plank if you already own Richie's VR experience. Bearly Escape is a new platform game available for MetaQuest headsets now. There are a few platform games that exist in VR. We've got Lucky's Tale and also the highly acclaimed Moss. So where does Bearly Escape fit in the spectrum of what is available for platform gamers in VR? Stick around and you'll find out. Bearly Escape sets the scene of you as a person who lives in a wood, and your dog, Robin, has been kidnapped. It's gone missing, you assume kidnapped. The game begins by telling you, you're living in your house and you should put up posters and send out a drone and go look for the dog, but straight away immediately cuts from that to you adventuring with a bear. And you learn from this bear that there's an evil scientist, a mad scientist called Dr. Kid in the woods who is capturing animals and putting them in claw machines. It's a little bit Dr. Robotnik, Dr. Eggman going on here with this scientist dude, but it's your job ultimately to free all of the captured animals from these claw machines and ultimately save Robin, your dog. The game essentially plays in 3 different parts. Firstly, you have what the game is known for. It's puzzle platforming. Now, this is similar to Moss-ish. Essentially, you control the bear, your friendly bear, who is customizable as you go through the game. You can unlock new skins for this bear, but it's a direct control of platforming action. It's not exactly heavy on combat or anything like that, like Moss. It's closer to Lucky's Tale in the terms of the kind of platforming you're doing. They are simple, short sequences between checkpoints, which you'll jump and climb and solve block puzzles and so on to get from point A to point B. As the human element in these levels, you can interact with the world by moving blocks and raising platforms and lowering platforms and so on in order to create a path for your bear to venture through. It's pretty simple stuff, but it does actually ramp up in difficulty fairly quickly. We're not going to be challenging platforming experts here at any point, but for people who are new to the genre or new to the genre in VR, there's some pretty nice challenges early on in the game. The second element of the game is the direct interaction with puzzles. Throughout the game, you'll encounter sequences in which you, as the main player, no longer controlling the bear, you're directly controlling yourself at this point, have to interact with small puzzles in order to unlock the way to progress forward. These are typically like pipe-style puzzles from Bioshock and so on, or light bouncing puzzles between mirrors where you have to rearrange items in order to create a path of light or water or electricity or whatever it is from point A to point B. They're pretty simple in their execution, but they are a nice distraction. As you progress through the game, they become less common, but it's still a nice sequence. What will annoy some VR players, however, is that there are no locomotion options. You are only given teleport, and in order to interact with these sequences, you have to teleport to a very specific spot. Stand there and the interaction will begin. The third sequence is something that will appeal undoubtedly to many people, and this is a VR claw machine. Once you have completed the level, bears and cats and dogs and so on will appear in a claw machine, and it is up to you to play the game and free them. As you free these animals from the claw machine, you acquire certain amounts of them, of each type, in order to unlock new things for in the levels. For example, the first element is that you have to rescue X amount of bears in order to earn a life, and those lives will help you progress through each level.
You are so kind. I'm very thankful.
The game has all manner of odd different currencies. You get rewards for doing X task, and those rewards can be spent for more credits on the claw machine or buying upgrades and so on. And honestly, it feels like it's a very unnecessary layer of complication. The game works perfectly fine as a game where you go through a 2.5D platforming section, then come and do a claw machine, and then solve a puzzle, and then carry on, so on and so on. The fact that there are silver coins and gold coins, it seems a bit too much, if I'm honest. There's a layer of complexity that isn't really needed to enjoy the game, and I'm not quite sure what the developers are aiming at with this. Maybe it's expected to be a way to draw people back to the game. If I come back tomorrow, I'll earn more coins and can play the claw machine more, and that's fine. But when you're paying a premium price for this game, I'm not sure interactions like this should be limited in such a way. In terms of the visual design, Bearly Escape is a really nice looking game. The environments are detailed and the animations are very fluid. The voice acting is a bit grating. It is obviously designed to be cutesy and aimed at younger players, and for that you can forgo what little voice acting there is. It's not intrusive on the game, but it is extremely cutesy. As far as platforming games go in VR, we really only have the two landmarks. We've got Lucky's Tale, which happened very early on, and the highly acclaimed Moss series, which hopefully there will be more coming down the line at some point. Bearly Escape, in terms of the style of gameplay it delivers, sits somewhere between the two. It's not as free-flowing as Lucky's Tale, and it's not as adventure-heavy as Moss. It also doesn't have the polish of either of these games. Lucky's Tale was a game that evolved into quite a complex platforming game in later stages, and Bearly Escape, while it does have some challenges, it never quite reached the levels of complexity of Lucky's Tale. And of course, the interactions and the relationship that you build with Quill in Moss far exceed any kind of relationship that you'll be having with the animals in Bearly Escape. So ultimately, Bearly Escape is a fun puzzle platform game that's suitable for players of all ages. It does take some adapting to get used to the platforming action, the 2.5D-ish platforming action coming away from a flat screen to VR. But once you've overcome that initial hurdle, you can expect to have a good time with Bearly Escape.
You are so kind. I'm very thankful.